Hello and welcome to the Nutmeg from the Evening Standard. I'm James Robson. With me today are Simon Collings and Jack Rosser, and a very special guest in the absence of Dan Kilpatrick, Alan Smith. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you. Pleased to be here.
No better place to start, I think, and you'll appreciate this, than the North London derby and Arsenal. I'm afraid we're going to have to... We're going to have to read you some of the stats, which aren't particularly pleasing to hear. Worst start for, is it 45 or 39 years? I've seen different noises.
Was it 1981 or have we gone further back than that now? It was 81-82 season, wasn't it? But I don't think we've gone further back. I wasn't involved in that side anyway. Nothing to do with me.
15th in the table, losing the North London derby to Spurs as well. I suppose the good news is that there is a little bit of breathing room between them and Burnley, 7 points. So it's not all bad, is it, at the moment?
Well, if you want to look at it like that, I suppose, yeah, glass half full and all that. I mean, listen, Arsenal went into the derby as underdogs. We all know that, but hoping they could get something. But just disappointing, I suppose, the way that the Gunners got done on the counter-attack in the way that Tottenham tend to do to opponents, and they fell into that trap. Obviously, Thomas Partey going off mid counter-attack didn't help with that second goal, but Arsenal didn't do too much wrong. You can't say they defended badly, can you? Particularly apart from those two goals. Gabriel, once again, was very strong. And the 2/3 of the play up until the final third was pretty good. So it was just, gutting to lose in that fashion.
Simon, you were pretty supportive of Arteta last week when we discussed the Arsenal crisis then. Still going on, I suppose. Your thoughts on Mikel? When you're in this sort of form, there's going to be pressure on. When you're at a club like Arsenal, it's going to be huge. How much is he to blame for their current plight, would you say?
I mean, he's got to take some blame, I think, for the current problems in the team. I think the disappointing thing about yesterday is it pretty much went exactly to script. That was a classic Jose Mourinho performance that we've seen, over the past decade, even dating back to his time at Chelsea in that first stint there. And it was Son and Kane who got the goals, who've been two of the best forwards all season. So we knew that was coming. And I think there you perhaps are a bit annoyed with Arteta because, this was Spurs' game plan and it was executed exactly how we thought. So I think he's got to take some criticism for that. But I think we've got to also look at the wider problems, which we touched on a bit last week. But this squad, it is an unbalanced squad. It's got 8 centre-backs. It's got Mesut Ozil not even registered. It's been assembled by, 2-3 different executives over the past 2-3 years. It's a real mishmash of a squad. And, Arteta spoke about when he came in about the non-negotiables and getting players out the door, but that didn't really happen in the summer, did it? Most of the deadwood stayed there. And I think now we're sort of seeing the ramifications of that and how difficult the situation is for Arteta. So these aren't necessarily his problems, but they're problems that he's going to have to solve because that's where Arsenal are right now.
I wonder, with Arsenal at the moment, we talked a little bit last week about they had Arsene Wenger, and it's dealing with when you lose someone who's been the absolute heart and soul of the club. Jack, do you think there's anyone at the club at Arsenal who knows how to deal with a crisis? Because they're not a club who, through the Arsene Wenger era, had to deal with sacking, hiring and firing. And suddenly they got rid of Emery very quickly. Now Arteta's in trouble. Do they know how to handle this?
I'm not sure. I think Simon's mentioned it in his piece today that they've sort of had a revolving door of executives going through upstairs, and obviously a new manager in Arteta as well that just has to stick to his plan and his convictions in what he wants to do with the club. And they've given him huge backing. They changed his title from head coach to manager. So he is in control of everything. It's more, I think you're right. I think there is a sort of absence of someone having that steady hand to guide them through it and that experience of going through a dip like this. But I don't know whether Alan will know how important it is that you get the buy-in from everyone when you've stuck to this sort of plan with Arteta, how important it is that you get that. And I don't know whether he has that. I think that is what will get you through a crisis is having buy-in from upstairs and from the squad. And I'm not sure if Arteta's got that at the moment.
Well, I think, as regards, keeping the players on side. I mentioned it in my column last Friday about it's interesting to contrast the two teams, because you're not telling me a lot of those Tottenham players enjoy following Jose's tactics, because it's hard work and you don't get very far. But you look at the table at the end of the match, you see you got 3 points, you see you're top of the table, and it's all worth it. And that was the case, I think, with Arteta at the start where there was an improvement, but now the results aren't coming. They're still having to work hard under his system, but obviously they're not getting any fruits of the labour, and people are disgruntled there, and that always happens with players. It always happens. They start moaning when results go against them. Why is the manager doing this? Why is the manager doing that? And that's something Arteta's got to deal with, and he's a new manager, and this is a new thing for him, isn't it? And I think the other point to make is I'm not sure. I think it was a mistake to make him manager rather than just keep him as coach. It was like, oh, we're giving you a big pat on the back for how well you've done. But, we were trying to move away from the Arsene Wenger mould where he oversaw everything. You want a coach in there, and you want strong management above that to make sure the club's being run in the right way. And unfortunately, I think for Arsenal, there isn't strong management above that playing side of things. There's a lot of inexperience, and obviously you got an absent owner. That's a long-running saga, but the problem is there about the leadership of the club. Arteta's a good coach. I think we all accept that. He has made mistakes. I think, I was surprised when he re-signed David Luiz, and I was surprised when he brought Willian into the club. That's costing the club a lot of money in wages, and it would have been nice to have gone for youth rather than a couple of players that have achieved everything really they need or probably want to in the game. And yeah, I thought that was a mistake by him, but as a young manager, he is going to make them along the way.
We should probably talk about the side that won at the weekend as well, the side that are sitting top of the table. The ponies aren't doing too bad, as Jose calls them. Alan, I think you touched on it then, that, okay, the players probably aren't going to enjoy the football, but the easiest way to get players on side is to see the results of what the manager's saying and working on the training pitch. And when they're winning week after week, who's going to complain?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and the likes of Harry Kane and Son are getting their chances every now and again, and if they're hitting the back of the net with those chances, they're going to be happy. The test comes when they lose some games, and also if Kane were to get injured, Son were to be missing, because that counter-attacking game is nullified to a large extent, and that's when players might become unhappy, because they're still having to work in that fashion but not getting the results. They haven't got the cutting edge. So Jose Mourinho hasn't had that hurdle to clamber over just yet in the way that Arteta has. But I mean, what he's asking them to do, it's working perfectly at the moment, isn't it? It is. As to whether he could do that right through the season and stay top of the table is another matter entirely. But at the moment, everybody knows the job, and they're looking a really strong outfit.
Simon, I remember when Jose was having a particularly bad time at United. I asked him then if his defensive style of football could ever win the biggest trophies again. And at the time, he was trying to play a more attacking style with United because he knew that's what the fans wanted. But he said, absolutely, that way, my usual way, the sort of parking the bus way, if you like, will win titles. And if you look at them this season, that's 7 points against City, Chelsea and Arsenal, no goals conceded. That's working, isn't it?
Yeah, and to be honest, I sort of felt like we'd moved on from the whole Mourinho era of a defensive team doing it, simply because of the way Guardiola and Klopp won the title. You felt like that was the blueprint for how teams are going to win titles now. But the way Spurs have gone about it, I think Alan touched on a bit, but the buy-in he's got from that squad, these are players who just completely 100% are under Mourinho's spell. They're enchanted by what he does, which is what he did when he was at first at Chelsea, when he was at Inter Milan. And when he gets that buy-in, the players, look around you and they go, well, we're winning matches, so why are we going to stop doing this? And for Spurs, it's even more remarkable because at the start of the season, that defence did not look like a defence that would be this good. I remember that West Ham game, that crazy match. And you looked at that defence there and you're like, this isn't a defence that's going to be keeping big teams out. but they seem to have completely bought in. And it's not necessarily the defence that done it, but it's the whole team who now do the job and defend as a unit. You know, Sissoko, Lo Celso, all those players, even Kane, you know, back in his own box winning headers. They've got that collective buy-in and a throwback to the team that we saw in the past decade.
Jack, we all talk to fans, I'm sure, and we've all covered a lot of different clubs. So what I've always noticed with fans is that they all want attacking, exciting football, don't they? They all love the Guardiola Klopp style football. But I think something that's universal among fans is they love winning football. So is this the way that Jose is going to keep those fans on side? And will he win round Tottenham fans to that style?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, if they can, like Alan says, they haven't had that run where this system's been put under a lot of strain so far, and they've really struggled. Chelsea maybe came close to it, and there were a few questions about it then, but everyone's speaking about it being a bit dour and not that fun to play in or watch. But I think if you're able to see your team against the bigger sides in a derby, every time Son or Kane got the ball on the break yesterday, there was a sort of a general angst, and the alarm bells started ringing for Arsenal, and that's exciting to watch as a Tottenham fan. I'd imagine it's those moments and those, you know, knowing the plan and seeing people not quite being able to deal with it and stop it is a huge boost to supporters. And as long as they're top of the table, Mourinho keeps saying, "Oh, maybe just one more week we'll be there," but they keep staying, then more and more are going to be won over to his side. I know there's still a few corners of Tottenham fans that can't quite accept him as their manager, but I think if they can keep this up, that will slowly fade away. And like the others have said, he's certainly got that buy-in from Kane, Son, and people on the pitch that are just a perfect representation of what he wants. Dyer, Højbjerg as well.
Alan, that's 250 career goals for Harry Kane. It seems every week we're talking about another milestone for him. Have we run out of good things to say about him? Have you got any more that you can say about him?
Well, I think we have found more to say about him since he's modified his game and turned into a deep line number 10 quite often. Who saw that coming? You know, he looked like the archetypal centre forward with number 9 on his back. I know he doesn't wear number 9, but you know what I'm saying? Working the last line, back to play, looking for the half chance. And then he moved a little bit deeper. I'd love to know what triggered that, whether it's his body telling him to do it, whether, you know, it's a little kinder on him in that respect. But, you know, all of a sudden we're talking about his passing range, his vision, rather than his ability to find the back of the, as well as his ability to find the back of the net. So he is the complete striker now that he's mastered that other side to his game, and his consistency is exceptional, you know, and he'll just be hoping he can stay fit. I'm sure Mourinho will be praying he can stay fit, because he's arguably the best in the world at the moment, because I don't see too many doing everything that Harry does, you know, in terms of dropping in and then getting up the other end and scoring goals.
Well, let's move on to Chelsea. You were at Chelsea this weekend, so was I. For the fans back, I think the first thing that struck me was those 2,000 fans was just how noisy they were. Because I'd not been in the ground for 9 months with fans in, and I thought you barely even notice it really. And it was such a raucous noise it made, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I was going to be interested. I mean, I'd seen the Arsenal on the Thursday night on the telly, and you could hear the noise then, and you saw how the players responded to that, and went over to thank them at the end. And yeah, those fans in the West Stand, they really made themselves heard. Maybe more than those in the Shed End, actually. They were giving some of the Leeds players stick, Llorente, the centre-half who came on as a sub particularly. And it was interesting, because normally commentating, I'll turn the augmented effects up, so I just can't hear the echoey atmosphere and individual players shouting and a coach shouting. I need that kind of crowd effect. But I didn't on Saturday night, and you could hear some of the fans' individual shouts, so that was quite amusing at times. But you're right, it kind of echoed around the stadium, and it did make for a brilliant atmosphere, actually. And you know, get another 2,000 in perhaps in time, and it'll build and build.
Jack, you were obviously at West Ham at the weekend, and I was just thinking from inside the ground, if this could be an advantage to Chelsea, because it is such an enclosed, tight ground, isn't it? And obviously West Ham's cavernous. So I wonder what it was like comparatively. Obviously, you weren't at Chelsea, but was it at West Ham? Was it loud? Could you tell?
Yeah, I was quite surprised actually. I mean, we sort of had where the press box is at West Ham. You're high up behind the dugouts, and the majority of the fans were in the opposite Billy Bond stand. But given how big the stadium is and given how few were in there, I was surprised at how loud it is. I mean, singing Bubbles was actually, I was quite surprised at how nice a moment it was for even, affecting people that have got no buy-in there. I go to West Ham a lot, but I'm not a fan, and it was really quite a nice moment. You sort of forget how much it can help, and it really helped the West Ham players in the first half, the way they were pressing, the way they were going after United and just couldn't put their chances away. But they really got an even bigger boost from their fans being there. They were cheering every sort of mistake that Manchester United made in possession, and maybe even surprising for West Ham fans, they all stayed at the end, all 2,000 of them, and applauded the players at the end. They've come back to see a very different team, and certainly in the first half you could see that and you could see the difference. But the one thing, and I think Gary Neville might have said it on commentary last night, that the 3 empty stands facing those that were in there sort of shows just how quickly this could ramp up and just how easily certainly Premier League clubs in stadiums of the size of London Stadium could manage much bigger attendances.
Simon, Chelsea moved to the top of the table briefly. Frank Lampard said before the game that he thought it was a year early probably for Chelsea to be real title contenders. But you've got Klopp saying they're favourites, I think he said. Jose, obviously the week before, saying they were real title contenders. It's hard to argue with that, isn't it? If anything, it sounds like Frank's trying to talk it down.
Yeah, it seemingly doesn't sound like anyone wants to be favourites in this title race. We have Mourinho doing it and Lampard now. But I think looking at Chelsea, the thing I noticed with them is the squad depth more than anything else, particularly after, playing in Europe and then playing at the weekend. They seem to be able to, mix and match players, drop people coming out. I mean, Giroud was written off and all of a sudden, scores 4 goals against Sevilla and then scores again. They've got this depth that I don't really think any other teams, certainly, not Spurs, I don't think have got that level of depth that Chelsea have. And even looking, at Liverpool and City, I think Chelsea really have got a squad that can rival them now. And they're certainly going forward. For me, Ziyech might have an injury now, but you look at how Mount's performed, you've got Pulisic coming back. He's really got a depth to his squad, Lampard, that for me has to make them title contenders. And I know he probably doesn't want to say that at this point, but when you look at his options, they've got a squad that should be challenging for the Premier League.
Alan, like Mikel Arteta, Lampard's a very young coach, but things are going very differently for him. Do you think he can be the manager, well, firstly, to win the title this year for Chelsea, but secondly, could he be that manager to finally be a long-term appointment for Roman Abramovich? I know it's very difficult to try to second-guess Abramovich, but he's a club legend. He's certainly got the fans backing. He seems to have a lot of backing within the club as well. And on the pitch, it looks great, doesn't it?
It does. It's all going swimmingly at the moment. But, you live and die by your results, don't you? And club legend or not, they were to lose 10 on the trot and finish mid-table, he'd be out, wouldn't he? But I think he will be quietly really encouraged and pleased by how it's going. As Simon said, the ability to make 9 changes between Tottenham and then Sevilla, and I think 9 again back to Leeds the other night. I mean, that is some rotation, and he's managed to get it right. And keeping all those players happy is not easy. These are big name players on big money, and he's going to have to use his man management skills an awful lot during the course of this season to keep everybody engaged and on side. But, I think all those players will get enough game time, and that's the key. So for Lampard, a bit less than Arteta, because Lampard's had more experience as a manager, but he will still be learning, and especially learning how to rotate, and how to keep that whole squad happy. But I mean, at the moment, it's going brilliantly. Everything he seems to do turns to gold. Olivier Giroud popping up with those 4, and then the other night as well. So at the moment, I think they are strong title contenders.
I would imagine Lampard, more than any other manager this season, will want to get January gone and out of the way, just because there are so many players, like you say, he needs to keep happy. There'll be lots of interest in in Giroud. Plenty probably sniffing around Callum Hudson-Odoi, Antonio Rudiger. There are loads of players, aren't there? But Giroud in particular, what a week for him last week, 5 goals. What do we think about him? Should he be the first choice striker at Chelsea, Simon?
I mean, I think on current form, you've got to play him as a first choice striker. I still think they're going to have that situation in January where it's going to come to a head because right now it's easy to rotate Giroud in and out and Abraham because it's a Champions League group game and then it's a Premier League game. It's almost easy to that rotation when you get in that second half of the season. And Giroud and Lampard are going to know that it's going to come to a point where Lampard goes, right, this is my best team. I'm playing them for these 10, 11 games because we're going for it. Just like Ferguson did with United, the rotation stops and you go for it. And Giroud at that point is going to want to know that you're going to play and you're going to be my main man because he wants to play in the Euros for France. And Deschamps has told him, you need to be playing. So I still think even with this run up to Christmas where Giroud might be the main man, he's going to want to know in January that for the rest of the season, he's going to get the games that he wants because otherwise he's going to have to look around and think where he's going to be guaranteed to play so he can stay in that France squad.
Alan, why hasn't Giroud been appreciated enough? I heard over the weekend that he's probably a player who teammates appreciate, but I always got the feeling, when I was at school, I didn't want to be considered the player's player, which generally meant you weren't the best. So what is it about him that makes us not maybe appreciate his talents?
I don't know really. I mean, you look at his goals to games ratio for club and for country, and it's outstanding. I mean, especially for France, it's magnificent. And he's a really good finisher, and he's got this ability. I would appreciate it as a centre forward, how to manoeuvre a defender out the way and just get his toe to the ball or get his head to the ball. It's a skill born of years of practice, and there aren't many out there with that kind of experience. Harry Kane's just the same. But as to why he wasn't appreciated, I don't know. He always gives his best. When he was a substitute at Arsenal and he came on, you wouldn't see him sulking. He's a great team man, great character, I think, to have in the dressing room. I'm sure he was released reluctantly at Arsenal. But, come the end of his career, I think everybody will recognise him as a top-class centre-forward. They certainly should.
Well, we've talked about a few young managers there. One golden oldie is still doing it, Jack. Roy Hodgson. It's all going pretty well there, isn't it?
It's it's taken a slight upturn over the weekend. There was a lot of questions being asked of him, and he looked very frustrated after they lost at Burnley and lost to Newcastle at home. He sort of had it in for the players a bit more post-match than he normally does. 2 defeats, two games without goals against teams that they really should be beating. They've spoken about having top 10 aspirations this season. I think top 4 keeping Zaha doesn't quite get you there yet. But for all of the debate around the red card at the weekend, which to me didn't seem to be one, it didn't seem to be a clear and obvious error that they'd made in not sending Pereira off, but that obviously changed the game. But I think Palace still would have come away with some of the football they were playing. Eze and Zaha linking fantastically, being given that space for Eze to drift inside and Zaha to go out wide and cause problems. And then it's fantastic to see Benteke get a chance and get some goals as well. I think he'd had only 58 minutes of Premier League football before the weekend to sort of show what he can do. And the bulk of that came against Newcastle, where he changed the way they were going forward. So he's the one player, I think, in the Palace squad that, like you talk about Giroud, does a lot of things for others as well. I mean, his goals record is really hard to defend, but given the time, then they might come up. But he does a lot for those around him. The space he makes for Zaha, for Eze, and having something to play off is really big for Palace. And it could be a big moment for him, and it's certainly a big moment for Hodgson to show that they can go and score so many goals in a game, having struggled. And it could be quite an entertaining season for Palace with all that attacking talent, as long as Hodgson uses it properly.
Well, that's all we've got time for this week. Just time to thank our guests, Simon Collings, Jack Rosser, and our super sub, Alan Smith. Fantastic debut from you. Thanks very much, guys. And remember to visit standard.co.uk for all the latest on the London clubs.